Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Back in the mid 1980s, my youngest brother got a book, Where's Waldo? And we spent a lot of time going page by page, finding the curious man with the cap and sweater. So much fun. Seems like it was just yesterday. Today, when I was researching the officer pictured here, George Blight Halsted, I was reminded of Where's Waldo. Halsted is all over the place during the Civil War. Beginning in 1861, he serves as an aide to a number of different officers in the Army and the Navy. And he is then in one of the first joint amphibious ground forces at Hatteras Inlet in 1861. He's captured at the Battle of Cedar Mountain in 1862. He spent some time in Libby Prison, where he's held with a neck halter for a while. I don't know what kind of punishment that was. And then he's at Fredericksburg. He's then in operations at Port Hudson. He's sent down to Louisiana. He's then serving to help organize colored troops in Louisiana. And then he returns to the East. He's in the Petersburg campaign. He's in the Appomattox campaign. He's severely wounded during the last days of the war. It's all over the place. And that's just his war service. So let me get to his role as an aide de camp. I got a list of everyone. I think it's complete. In the Navy, Silas Stringham and Lewis M. Goldsborough. In the Army, Generals Phil Kearny, which is appropriate because Halsted was from New Jersey, Nathaniel P. Banks, Christopher Columbus Augur, Augustus Lewis Chetlain, Gouverneur K. Warren of Gettysburg fame, and Charles Griffin. The wound is from the Battle of White Oak Road on March 31st of 1865. We're just looking at less than 2 weeks before the surrender of Robert E. Lee to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. There is a really great description of the wounding and of Halsted's reaction. It's written by a New York cavalryman named Augustus Caesar Buell. Now, historians dismiss Buell's books because they're loaded with exaggeration, all kinds of embellishment. But I have to share this anecdote because it does line up with his official record. So let me read this to you. Quote, Major Halsted was hit twice while helping Warren, that's Gouverneur K. Warren, to rally the troops, but was not disabled, at least on the surface. One bullet struck him on the thigh, cutting his trousers and making a slight flesh wound. The other hit him just above the corner of his vest pocket, glancing from the ends of his ribs and passing under the skin, clear around to his back, where it lodged on the large muscle alongside his spine. Halsted swayed a little in his saddle when this last ball struck him and turned a bit white in his lips, but straightened up in a moment and said to me and the other orderly with him, as we noticed his distress, I'm not much hurt, boys. Come along. What kind of grit and determination is that? Buell, the writer, added, quote, he was as game a man as I ever knew. The surgeon had addressed the back wound twice a day, but he stuck to his saddle and never quit till Lee surrendered. What a quote. Halsted survived the wound and the rest of the war. I mentioned he was born in New Jersey, and here we get into the Where's Waldo thing again. His mother descends from Abraham Clark, a signer of the Declaration of Independence from New Jersey. Halsted pops up at Princeton, where he graduates in 1839. 3 years later, he joins his father as a lawyer. In 1845, he becomes a court reporter. All this is in New Jersey. And he takes a break in 1849 to become a gold miner in California. Of course, he pops up way out west in California. He only lasts a year and comes back home. He's a Democrat who voted for Stephen Douglas in the 1860 presidential election. No Abraham Lincoln for him. He went for Douglas. And then on April 20th, 1861, a day after the Baltimore riot, also known as the Pratt Street riot, he is so fired up about what happened in Baltimore that he decides to join the army. He starts out as a lieutenant, and then he serves all of those senior officers as an aide. In 1862, he joins the adjutant general's office, and he's promoted to captain on April 9th, 1865, the day of the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. Now, he had a younger brother named Frank William Halsted, who was in the Navy. And young Frank, this was the younger brother, sends a letter to Edwin M. Stanton endorsing Halsted for a promotion. And he mentions in the letter that Halsted has always sustained a reputation for extreme bravery, gallantry, and a thorough performance of his duty. As a result of that letter and other endorsements, he gets a brevet rank. It's an honorary rank of major for gallantry during the war. Now, after it's all over, he returns to the law. He practices for a while until 1876, when he heads out to Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota, and he's there to handle the estate of his younger, now late brother, Frank. Frank had settled on a small cottage known as the Hermitage, and Frank became known as locals up around Lake Minnetonka as the Hermit of Lake Minnetonka. Halsted winds up staying, and I want to read you this story that gives you the details and the tragic ending of George Blight Halsted. So here we go. I'm going to start with his brother. Captain Frank William Halsted and his elder brother, Major George Blight Halsted, were the lonely occupants for nearly 50 years, one succeeding the other, of a picturesque dwelling called the Hermitage. It was situated on Halsted's Bay, so named for Captain Halsted, at the head of Lake Minnetonka, 10 miles west of Minneapolis, a popular summer home site for Minnesota people. Both Captain and Major Halsted met tragic deaths. At the age of 23 years in 1855, Frank William Halsted, again, that's the brother, left a fine home, a cultured and well-to-do family, and bright prospects in cultivated society in New Jersey, for what reason is not now known, to build a cabin in the wilderness and live there alone for 20-odd years. Returning after service in the United States Navy in the Civil War, Captain Halsted replaced the cabin with a substantial house in which he accumulated books and historical relics, including a chair from the Mississippi home of Jefferson Davis, given him by Miss Winnie Davis. Although called a hermit, he did not have the traditional traits of one, for he was genial and sociable. Sightseers, whom he welcomed, visited his unique home and wrote their names on the walls, both inside and outside, until they were finally entirely covered with signatures and addresses. Captain Halsted was drowned in Lake Minnetonka in 1876, probably as a suicide, although there was some evidence of foul play by robbers. He had constructed a boat, which he had named Mary in honor of his mother. That was a failure as a watercraft, and his disappointment is thought to have prompted self-destruction. In compliance with his wishes, the body was placed in a coffin, which he had made and left ready, and was buried in the front yard of the Hermitage under a large maple tree with a boulder as a gravestone. Major Halsted, that's our man, George Blight Halsted, came to the Hermitage at the time of his brother's death, was attracted to the place, and decided to remain and live there also. It is a legend that he left the furnishings in some parts of the house exactly as he had found them, even to the dining room table dishes, which had been laid out by his deceased brother for a meal. Major Halsted added to the library and the curios, and the stream of visitors continued. About 1 o'clock in the night, September 15th, 1901, the Hermitage burned and Major Halsted was destroyed in the flames. This was not known until the next afternoon. Neighbors who noticed the fire mistook it for the burning of a boathouse on the lakeshore. The major had gone to the village of Excelsior in the afternoon, seemingly in good health and spirits, and had returned to his home in his rowboat as usual. It was supposed that a kerosene lamp at his bedside, by which he was known to read at night, had been overturned, perhaps when he had fallen asleep. His will contained this unique section. It is my wish and desire, and I hereby order, desire, and direct my ancestors, my executors, hereinafter named, that when I am dead, I shall be buried in the simple box, as was my brother, which I have made for this occasion years ago. It will be found behind the door entrance to the hermitage, requiring no hammer or nail to prepare it for its intended use, viz., to carry me into the grave to be laid beside my brother Frank under the maple. Let the large army flag be placed on it from the hermitage to the grave, and if the ladies of the Mary Halsted Circle of the Grand Army of the Republic are present or absent, let the flag be given to the circle as a memento of mother and sons. The ashes of Major Halsted were placed in a simple black box instead of the coffin he had made for his body, and were buried under the maple tree beside his brother, and the spot was marked with a second large boulder. The ladies of Mary Halsted Circle of the Grand Army of the Republic were present at the funeral and received the flag. Some years afterwards, the maple tree was blown down in a cyclone. The Hermitage property was purchased by C.A. Loring of Minneapolis, president of the Pillsbury Flour Mills Company, a friend of Major Halsted, who erected a modern dwelling on the site. So there you have it, the story of a Civil War Waldo, George Blight Halsted. We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, take care.